Welcome to Pitch It To Me Podcast, a show about the subjective past, present, and potential future of flesh and blood design. We're an intellectual show, sure to increase your lexicon. Today's episode will be about Lexi Livewire's Living Legend life. On Red Pitch, Joel takes a look at Lexi's journey to Living Legend. On Yellow Pitch, Clark makes a deep dive into Lexi's card synergies and power levels. On Blue Pitch, Fuzzy will give his interpretation of a potential new Lexi replacement. You can find us across all socials such as TikTok and Instagram at Pitch It To Me Podcast. I'm Fuzzy.
I'm Joel.
And I'm Clark.
Oh, you missed an A.
Oh, God damn it.
So, okay, we know we're not exactly quick on the draw with this episode. I think at the time of recording, nevertheless, time of release, right?
Yeah.
Lexi hit Living Legend a month ago.
Oh, God, has it been that long?
It's been a little bit.
It wasn't recent.
But, let's be honest. Did you really want to hear more talk about Lexi as soon as she rotates? Haven't we all kind of had a lot of Lexi over the last, few seasons?
I think you can get some more L's in there.
Yeah, I was clocked out 4 months before she LL'd. I was over it.
I was so done with the conversation. Everyone calling for bans or nerfs and then bitching about how LSS handled it. All the while, she's still playing in tournaments and we're still waiting for it to happen. It was annoying to be on Twitter at that time.
It was a time.
So we all had a little bit of a break, but we're ready to come back and talk about Lexi again to celebrate her retirement. She's gone from Classic Constructed. Let's talk about her.
So by the time this episode is live, we will actually have a public Discord.
What?
We've been lurking in there for a while, just us, 5 or 6. But it's been a goal of ours for a while. And now that we have some concurrent listeners, we thought it might be a good idea to start fostering a bit more back and forth between us and you guys, the listeners, because we want to hear what you guys have to say, give us feedback, your card designs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
A couple of our friends that we already talked to a bunch about Flesh and Blood, and a lot of the collaborators that you've heard on here before. Han, who appeared on one of the episodes, Talon, our executive producer, even a random friend of mine from college, Peter. They're all just in the Discord right now, and we're already talking about Flesh and Blood. So if you'd like to join us and talk about Flesh and Blood in yet another Flesh and Blood Discord, feel free to join. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, I feel like being a content creator has been a dream of mine. I feel like a lot of people gotta have that dream nowadays.
It is the number one dream job for young children now.
For sure.
In elementary school is that they want to be an influencer content creator.
It's fun.
And while I don't know if I would call this a career or a job, it's more of a hobby. But step one, I already feel really happy with what we've been able to produce. Mm-hmm. I feel like the next level of actually being able to engage with fans and it's not just generic people that listen to our show, but people that actually talk to us about it, that would make my life.
Yeah, right now we're still just kind of screaming into the ether.
Yeah.
And the moment that we get a call back, that's going to be the whoa, I'm actually interacting.
Yeah.
This is real.
We're engaging.
And then we want to do some stuff in the future, maybe have some contests or...
Fuzzy, don't spoil it.
So if you want to join our Discord, that's going to be public by the time you hear this, and we'd just love to have you join. You should find links on our socials and stuff.
So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our red pitch. Joel, what do you have for us?
Clark, I'm so glad you asked. So... taking a look at Lexi, she had a lot of different forms as she'd gone from 0 to Living Legend. And I wanted to take a sort of a deep look at what she was intended to be and what she ended up being. In the early days, I noticed that she was sort of a mixed bag. She was mostly reacting to Briar because she had, this lightning aggro build where she played Ball Lightning, Death Dealer, and Snapshot, which was a lightning fusion card that said you may fuse an ice, or you may fuse a lightning card. If you do, you can play your next, bow an additional time as an instant. So you basically just got to keep drawing cards and keep playing snapshots. And the more prevalent version, which you first came out, was the like this tall ice build. And this was mostly in response, again, to Briar making better use of Ball Lightning, other generic 0-for-4s, things like that, Captain's Calls, Plunder Runs. This was like a way to punish the aggro decks that didn't really have a large blue count, because Ice had just came out with Lexi. So there was sort of like a learning curve, but still, like, it was really tough to play against Lexi in this day and age as an aggro deck, because she was just, give you multiple Frostbites, make you discard from hand. So she was very oppressive and like almost a necessity at that point, because that was really the only counter to Briar.
Yeah, because Briar was trying to really do this like go wide strategy with a lot of breakpoints, and with Ball Lightning, essentially every single one of those breakpoints ended up hitting for just one was actually hitting for two.
Right.
So if that's the better version, if Briar is running the better version of that deck, Lexi doesn't want to do that. Lexi instead wants to pivot to one of her other strategies so that she can kind of avoid the decks that are building to beat the Briar.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't want to try to be the better aggro deck and then just lose even harder to the decks that were already beating Briar and the aggro decks in general. And we sort of see more of the evolution after Ball Lightning was banned. This Lightning archetype was never really visited on a large scale since then. It kind of pivoted completely to heavy ice control. We saw that through the Briar meta, the Chain meta, and also against like Starvo, like that was in contention. It wasn't super great, but it was a deck that existed, and again, kind of warped around the meta that was just so many aggro decks kind of really pushing the limits of the game.
Yeah, that was my first like introduction to Lexi. Like, that was the Lexi that was around when I first started getting into competitive Classic Constructed, and it was a tough matchup for Briar too. Like, Briar was one of those heroes that had pretty average matchups all around, like generally kind of favored because she was a strong deck.
Right.
But there were like one or two that was really bad for her. And like Lexi with her like ice on hits, like Blizzard Bolts, and like every single one of these is threatening to take a card out of your hand. And she's throwing like multiple of them that have their own breakpoints. So you kind of have to throw your whole hand at them anyway, or else you can't do anything on your turn. You can't like have your cake or eat it.
Yeah, and that's important because Ball Lightning is stronger the bigger your hand is, the more attacks you're able to throw, the more value you get out of that one card. Eventually ends up becoming like a 0-for-6 value, just because the amount of attacks you've thrown is adding 1 technically onto every single one of them.
Yeah, this is after Ball Lightning though. Like, I'm thinking about like the more ice-centered build where like you're throwing Blizzard Bolt. There might still be some lightning arrows in there, but mostly it's like, I think I can only say Blizzard Bolt at this point. But
there's also Chilling Ice Vein too.
Yeah, Chilling Ice Vein. So these on hits were like really devastating, and then you throw in like a
Rain Razors.
A Rain Razors on top of that, and you blocked, and you still are getting hit with like these killer tax effects. So Briar, who wanted a 5-card hand, was never going to have that happen. You would like, quote unquote, I'm putting some heavy air quotes here, hope for an off turn.
yeah.
Which Lexi at the time like kind of had, but not really.
Yeah, she was still consistent. She still had access to 3 of a kind. She still had access to Art of War. Yuki Lee Bender kind of like single-handedly made this new like archetype that used a lot of ice and was still very aggressive. And that's sort of like the precursor to what Lexi eventually turned into. So then we move to post Outsiders, and she becomes this like behemoth of a deck. A set that was supposed to make the new Ranger Riptide, have some type of stake into the meta, and was supposed to make Azalea like, Azalea Star of the Show was like the meme where she gets all these new pieces and becomes like this like really good deck. And she was for like a month. And then Lexi's like, wait a minute, I can just do what you do, but more?
Yeah, I remember the way the pros kept talking about it with Pro Tour Baltimore. It was the first huge event after Outsiders, and everyone was like, we don't know who's the strongest, maybe Azalea. And all the pros, like in their own like conference rooms where they meet with their teams and like prepare for the event, they all secretly knew that Lexi was strong. And then they all showed up with Lexi, and they're like, oh, so you figured it out too.
Yeah, the cat was out of the bag pretty early on.
It kind of demonstrates this idea of like it's hard to give support to a class without like buffing these talented versions of those classes unless you strictly make it like a specialization, right?
Right.
Like when they made Codex of Frailty, they knew what they were doing. I'm not sure if they knew like this was, I think they did say that before that they knew Lexi was going to be strong with Codex of Frailty.
Sure.
So I don't think people really wanted Lexi to be as strong as they wanted Azalea to be strong, or maybe even Riptide, you know? These like weird, less spotlighty heroes. Like Lexi never felt like a problem, but she got the help anyway. And she turned into like this meta that you're about to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's meaningful to point out that like Outsiders came out this year. Tales of Aria was released in 2021. So that means that almost 2 full years, not exactly, but like almost 2 full years of Lexi being present in the meta, but not broken, not the top, but always present, doing a lot of this nice, fair fuse builds, making use of the strong equipment, but never like really doing anything crazy. And then Outsiders happened.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to leave it for you, Joel.
Yeah, so after, like, when Outsiders came out, both Oldhim and Briar received, like, pretty extensive nerfs, like, to get them under control, right? And Lexi, like, never got that treatment because, like you said, Clark, she's been around all this time, just never had any type of conversion other than being strictly, like, anti-aggro for so long.
Well, she definitely got points. I don't know where exactly she was sitting before Outsiders, but, like, she still had points. She was a reasonable hero in the meta.
For sure, yeah. She probably got, you know, maybe, like, a quarter of her points during this time strictly because she was so good into Briar, which was like winning everything. I think she got to like 600 or 700 before they finally banned Ball Lightning. And then Lexi, you know, after Outsiders became the next tier 0 aggro deck. And I've heard a lot of people say that she's like the healthiest. And I do agree to a point because she wasn't Starbow level broken. She wasn't Chain level broken, Prism, any of those decks. She was just kind of like the next runner up in the long list of like good heroes, and she had, I think, one of the next largest card pools. So it was just made sense that she was going to be the best aggro deck since Azalea and Riptide weren't doing much with the Outsiders' help. Even though Lexi was like arguably the healthiest tier 0 aggro deck, she still ended up getting, in my mind, 2 other heroes to LL because of her. Like Oldhim, the only way you could really beat Lexi was to go full fatigue. And we kind of saw that with what Michael Fang did at the Pro Tour and later what Pablo Pintor did at Calling Antwerp, where they both used Oldhim at a really high level to get, you know, beat Lexi because she was consistent, but she wasn't like that oppressive if you knew how to specifically counter her.
Yeah, in our Oldhim Living Legend episode, we talked about how Control really needs to know what the premier aggro deck is. And that aggro deck needs to be so strong that it's pushing other aggro decks out of the meta. That's when Control can really show its stuff because you need to tailor your control ability to the deck that you are countering. And if the aggro field is too wide, then you can't tailor your control methods enough. So the only way that this super control-y Oldhim was able to Living Legend is because Lexi was so dominant in the aggro
So
space.
true. Like Lexi created a field for herself with her, you know, on hits and things like that, where no other aggro deck could out disrupt her, out DPS her on any turn by turn basis. And so Ranger's natural enemy is Guardian, and why not, you know, Oldhim because he has access to Crown of Seeds and Rampart and all the other defensive cards, and just like you said, Clark, just made the perfect set of circumstances for Oldhim to LL. Then at U.S. Nationals, Briar and Charles Dunn knocked everyone's socks off with this fatigue Briar list because
What a legend.
Yeah, no, he was truly an amazing player to watch. Like he made one of the most dominant aggro heroes to come out of Tales of Aria. He's like, wait, I still have Crown of Seeds, bro. I'm a fatigue deck, and he just did it. Like literally, the last 2 points that Briar needed was used to beat Lexi because Briar was not converting in any other list. It had to be fatigue, and so it's just really amazing to see how Lexi, who wasn't even the strongest tier 0 deck, made 2 other heroes like literally break their deck construction philosophies to combat her. And the last example I'll bring up is how Dromai also earned a lot of points while Lexi was at the top of the meta, because Dromai was one of the very few decks after Oldhim left to be able to deal with her on a consistent basis. And you have to try. Even so, you still had to put in a lot of reps as Dromai for this specific matchup, because Lexi was just so consistent, and it wasn't always favored for the Dromai, because you can just get, as Lexi, you can just set up a 6-card hand and blow out whoever's trying to fatigue you. And the reason why I bring this up is because the old Living Legend system, I think, was in large part to how many points not only Lexi earned, but how many points Dromai earned. In a meta that was the exact same for like 7-8 months, during that time period, there was no decision made by LSS to nerf Lexi because she was still healthy. And this was like around when Oldhim and Briar were close, but didn't LL just yet. And then they both left. And so now she's at this like 800, Lexi's at this like 800, 900 point mark where it's just like, let's just let it ride and let her leave. Meanwhile, Dromai is still, because Lexi like was powerful but not that powerful, was still getting racking up all these points. And it just sucks to see, because I know there's a lot of like Lexi enjoyers that really enjoyed the hero that don't get to play with her anymore, because there was just like no decision to be made like while she was so dominant. And maybe Dromai doesn't have to get like, 2/3 of the way there to LLing because she has to deal with Lexi, right?
I think it's so interesting that you bring that up, because I think that's one of the reasons why they made this shift in the new Living Legend system to earn more points for every single tournament that you win.
Right.
Because I think they started realizing, now the top heroes in our meta aren't just unbalanced heroes from bad design times or like awkward balance mishaps that happened.
Right.
Now they are good, healthy heroes that can still be beaten in a meta.
Right.
And so if we actually want them to LL in a reasonable time frame, we need to start giving more points for things like Battle Hardens and Callings.
Right.
Or make those big wins even bigger.
Right.
So that we can get them to that LL point a little bit faster, so that we don't end up with another Lexi situation where, God damn it, it's just 100, 150 points every single season for a year. And she's just always there, always defining everything else in the meta without ever finally getting to that point. We may have never seen that final, we never would have had that final tournament session. What was that? Was it ProQuest season?
Yeah.
The final little bit of Lexi was the ProQuest season. She may have LL'd out before that if she was earning those higher point amounts that we have now for the entire year leading up to it.
Right.
And really, it was that meta that I heard the most people complaining about how long she's been around.
Right, because she was winning like every single event. Like, as many decks like came to counter her, she was still like at the top of every single event, converted like more than half of the the top 8s of these different like Callings or Battle Hardens. And I'm in agreement. Like, if the point was to make her LL quicker, then this system should have been around a long time ago. Same with this new like weekly check-in, so that Lexi leaves earlier. Okay, now Dromai doesn't have as many points, and we can start seeing it like a newer meta early on, so that, again, we're just going to run into because now I feel like we're going to run into the same issue with Dromai, with her, her tome being just like especially oppressive, and some other heroes, certain heroes not being in the meta. We'll talk about later, but like hopefully they LSS learn from their mistakes, and we can have a more balanced meta, a more interactive like relationship between LSS and the Metascape, things like that. Because I don't know if I could handle another season or another like whole year of the same hero being at the top and being forced to play like one of 3 decks, or just like play a hero not in the way that it's intended, just to beat one specific deck.
Yeah, decks shouldn't have to be so dominant that they are winning literally everything to get to the point where they should Living Legend out. And I think Lexi was really the hero that taught that lesson to LSS.
So true. I love that.
Except like she wasn't winning literally everything. That's why it took so long.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Like
Yeah.
a hero shouldn't have to be there to get out.
Yeah.
They should be in a healthier state where they're actually trading a couple things back and forth, and the right play, the right RNG can still lead to other heroes getting points.
She was like defining the meta without dominating it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was such a weird relationship.
and
you know?
heroes that do that, they need to still move out.
Yeah, that or some type of tweak. But I think that kind of wraps it up for my section. Clark, I'm really interested to see how you analyze her, synergies and her power levels and how she got to where she is.
Yeah. So for Yellow Pitch, I named my section a Tempest of Cardboard because god damn it, that's what it feels like playing against Lexi. Is just God, how many cards? How many cards have I seen this turn? Too many goddamn cards. I have 4 card hands. Why are you playing 7? Why is there 7 on the board right now?
You blocked with 2 cards. Why are you still throwing 4 cards at me? And pitching.
Exactly. But that really is what Lexi kind of ended with. It's definitely not what she started with. With this series that we've done, it's important to note that we've only talked about Tales of Aria heroes. So when I think about the 3 Tales of Aria heroes, Lexi is for sure the healthiest, in my opinion. And like the most indicative of what I think the purpose of the Tales of Aria heroes were supposed to be. Why did they give them all 2 talents and a class and the generic elemental card? Like you have 5 card pools to pull from to build these heroes. And I think it's because flexibility. That's good in a hero.
Flexibility.
God, you're really just
You
like
walked into that one.
I did, but you're
Lexi really embodies that flexibility.
yes. And I think your conversation and talking about the history of Lexi over her time period really showed that. When Ball Lightning was the most dominant thing, and it was the thing that she should have been running, she was doing this really lightning focused, lots of go again, throw as many arrows as possible. And then when that was no longer her strongest deck and it wasn't the most way to win, it wasn't the best way to win anymore, they switched to this like go tall ice build. That's a lot of fun. And then there's also just the Fuse build. We had a Lexi main at our local shop who would always show up with, he called it Fuse Lexi.
Yo, let's go, Diego.
Yo, Diego! He was all about just throwing ice and lightning cards and fusing them constantly. And every single time I tried to build the deck, I'm always like, wait, do I have enough lightning cards? Do I have enough ice cards? It was so interesting to build these decks and seal the different types that you can build. And the fact that she has 3 completely different strategies that have picked her up points, I think really shows a great versatility that let her stay big in the meta for a long period of time. And that is kind of what they wanted from Tales of Aria heroes. They wanted them to be playable in every meta. You don't want your hero to just be like, oh, Warmonger's Diplomacy is good to play now. Guess my hero's trash. Yes, I am bitter.
That card was crazy.
It's still crazy.
Yeah, it's still in the meta. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's always going to be in the meta, buddy. And so it's great that she has the ability to change from meta to meta. I think that there was a big problem, though, and it was a problem that a lot of Tales of Aria had, which was Tales of Aria was really unbalanced. I think a lot of the lightning power that Lexi had was budgeted in Ball Lightning. It was the lightning action card that you were supposed to feel comfortable arsenaling and flipping up to give something go again. It was supposed to be the thing that like really promoted this go wide, multiple bow activation sort of strategy where you're just drawing a lot of cards, putting a lot on the table. And then when Ball Lightning went away, it's like, okay, why do we play Lightning now? And there weren't a lot of good reasons. And so it was sort of sad to see her Lightning strategies just sort of fade away from there. The Fuse build still had it, but it just wasn't the same.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Clark, because Ball Lightning was like one of those generic lightning cards that you said that every element should, or was printed with these elemental heroes from Tales of Aria. And after Ball Lightning left, it was like you were left with, I think, Heaven's Claw and what's the one from Arsenal?
Lightning Surge.
Lightning Surge? Yeah, and then I think there's Entwine Lightning. But it gets way clunkier, right? By losing Ball Lightning.
It's kind of like Go Again is a cool aspect to play with. It can't be its own deck because it doesn't stack with itself at all, right?
Yeah.
I can't have like all these cards that are giving me Go Again when I only need it once. I just need one, you know?
And then it had the direct damage thing of like adding damage on hit, but then we realized that just adding power is always better. And you want your on hits to not be more damage. You want your on hits to be disruption. And ice was what did that, which is kind of why when Ball Lightning got banned, she moved to the ice build in a more effective way. So it was sad to see that go away. And then we see this Voltaire New Horizon strategy, which I think is really what is a massive part of what allows these like 8, 6, these...
It's hard to count. Like you see so many of them
like,
in one turn.
What is the average Lexi turn? Because I feel like it's always 8, but they really only do that when they have 3 of a kind.
But it always feels like it has 3 of a kind.
It always feels like they have 3 of a kind.
On your normal run-of-the-mill ho-so-so Lexi turn, you play 3 of a kind, fire off 5 arrows after you play your Rain Razors. Like Rain Razors 3 of a kind is normal Lexi, right?
Could you imagine if she still had Plunder Run?
Oh.
Nightmare. And then New Horizon, I think she just synergizes way too much with New Horizon. Like, I feel the same way about 3 of a kind. And Rain Razors, actually. Like, all 3 of those big Ranger power cards feel really healthy in Azalea. Like, really, really healthy in Azalea. Azalea has to work very hard to get the second Arsenal slot. And then, like, how do you even utilize having 2 Arsenal slots? It's an interesting little conundrum. I think there's a lot of fun and interesting gameplay with Azalea around it, and that gameplay exists in Lexi, but because Lexi has a bow that lets her load twice, it's actually just so much more insane.
Yeah.
Because that bow that lets her load twice also gives a free pump while loading to Bolt and Shot to activate the Go Again and reload. Like, it's just everything synergized too much.
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
I keep forgetting just how many nice combos were in like Lexi lists.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, oh yeah, Lexi was good because she was really like Voltaire and New Horizons just worked really well. Or her hero ability and New Horizons worked really well together. Or Bolt and Shot and Voltaire worked really well together. But really like Voltaire and like every strong arrow that doesn't automatically have Go Again, you know, the ones that are supposed to like cap your turn.
Yeah. It just did everything.
Finisher.
Yeah.
Once we started getting towards the end of Lexi's lifespan, the main ban that people were calling for was Voltaire.
Yeah.
Because so much of her ability to storm off a lot of arrows was entirely reliant on this double load capability and the free +1 on an arrow to give it reload. I think that was just so much of the power level in one card that it became the kind of scapegoat for banning, even though, again, it was perfectly healthy for a ton of Lexi's lifespan.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the Outsider arrows, the Outsider's arrows, which had this plethora of new on-hits that Azalea really likes, but what if they had Go Again? Then there's no reason not to run Lexi, because you can play multiple of them, chain them together, and then Codex of Frailty makes it so that you have 6 copies of every...
Oh, trust me, I'm going to get to that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned like Voltaire and how people kept calling to ban it. I think like part of it's the pattern because there were 3 majestic weapons printed in Tales of Aria. One of them is Duskblade, which was banned like I think
never
before
saw the light
the
of
set
day.
was released.
Yeah, never saw the light of day.
They're like, oh no, that's on the print run.
Wait a minute. Who forgot to cut that?
And then Winter's Wail, which was also really strong, but was around for like a year before it was banned.
Arguably the best weapon in the game.
And then Voltaire, which is also like arguably the best weapon in the game. So like I think everyone was like, majestic weapons are a mistake. Let's just correct that mistake and move on with their lives. But it was just so much of Lexi's power level.
Yeah.
Like what else is she supposed to run? Death Dealer? You want Lexi to run Death Dealer?
Well, she has Shiver too.
She's not gonna run Shiver. That's not gonna happen.
Also, oh my god, complete aside, but we just did pitch and predictions. Did none of us predict majestic weapons coming back?
I think it might be in there. I don't know.
God damn it. Okay, never mind. We can keep moving on.
Better not. That'd be so funny.
That'd be so funny.
I
It's
really
like the most obvious thing to predict.
Yeah, and I really like the majestic weapon system because, like, you know, they have some really interesting, like, very specific.
They're super cool and synergistic.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Bolton has Raiden. He wouldn't be a deck right now if he didn't have Raiden.
Raiden's the only
Yeah.
good one.
No, exactly.
I feel like, okay,
No, Hexagore.
Well, that's not even
Hexagore's
good.
bad.
Yeah.
That's kind of good now. Hexagore's bad.
I feel like the Dynasty majestic weapons, the ones that were like really niche but offered another playstyle. I'm talking Sandscour, Great Bow.
Yeah.
I'm talking Rock. Like
Rock!
like those are some pretty cool designs. A lot of them don't see like any play, but
Yeah.
they're kind of there waiting, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, Tales of Aria, it was that third majestic weapon with way too much power budget. And we're like, all right, let's get rid of it. What do you mean you're not getting rid of it?
Well, at
What
least
do you mean you're not getting rid of it? What do you mean bullseye braces? That's a 20-cent card. What are you doing? LSS loves banning my common 20-cent cards, man.
For real.
I fucking love doing that shit.
Clark's like, look, Flesh and Blood is so cheap. I've got my 20-cent arms piece instead. I don't need any legendaries. What? Why you ban it?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
But then we come around to really the straw that broke the camel's back, which was Outsiders. Where all of a sudden now, I think that there's... I mean, you brought it up perfectly, Joel. It was, there is power that they are giving to other things that just happen to fall into Lexi.
Yeah.
And with 3-of-a-kind Rain Razors, double load, free go again, a second arsenal slot, all of a sudden it just becomes so oppressive. Lexi has disruption through her ice abilities, as well as a few arrows. She has resiliency through Codex of Frailty, being able to get things back from graveyard, through the Ponder token that it gives her. Lexi has all of this disruption with all of her ice abilities and with all of these outsider arrows, right? That provide the disease tokens on hit. Then she also has this incredible resiliency. You could throw unhits that are encouraging her to discard cards or destroy her arsenal, and it's fine because she now has Codex of Frailty to get things back from graveyard. She has Heat Seeker to flip things off the top. She can create Ponder tokens with Premeditate and with Codex of Frailty to put cards in Arsenal, which, by the way, she's allowed to do because that Heat Seeker put the card face up, so the Ponder token lets her put it face down into Arsenal because of New Horizon. Like, it all just comes together with this hyper synergy. It is cardboard on top of cardboard on top of cardboard, and all of it works so well together that it makes Lexi probably the most fun deck in the world to play. But I wouldn't know, because if I dared spend the money and bring it to an armory, people were going to like slash my tires.
The way that people describe this deck too, especially like going into like this last Pro Quest season right before she rotated, I feel like the spikes, the people who just wanted to win tournaments, they didn't even want to play Lexi because like this deck is boring, you know?
Yeah.
They say it's boring, but also how can it be boring when you can do everything better than everybody else? When you're throwing better disruption than everything other than Guardian.
I guess like it wasn't very complex play lines. Like you load the arrows, you shoot the arrows.
Yeah.
You take a couple games to learn how to sequence, but the sequence is mostly the same every turn, you know?
You try to draw 3-of-a-kind early enough so that you can churn through your deck to get to the next 3-of-a-kind,
Yep.
the next Ponder, the next Heat Seeker, and just keep churning through your deck, seeing more cards than ever before. And in this game, there's oftentimes the conversation of go wide and versus go tall. When you go wide, you throw a lot of low attacks. When you go tall, you throw one big attack. Well, Lexi, she's throwing the whole fucking wall at you. It's wide and tall, and it is so frustrating to deal with.
So Wally.
And especially as we get to the end here, when all these synergies really start lining up, when all this power starts coming from that were meant for other strategies, but happen to fall into Lexi's one or two of Lexi's 5 different card pool categories, she's no longer the hero that she was in Tales of Aria.
Yeah.
No one's really fusing anymore. No one's really trying to give you frostbites at the start of every turn. That's not what the decks are designed to do. It is Arrow Storm. She has become a Tempest of steel and wood and pain. And it's not fun to see that happen to a hero.
Yeah.
I think as much as we hate what Lexi looked like, I think if that was what was intended for her, I would be less bothered by it.
Right.
But here we have Lexi she is living legending out. What is the verb?
She's retiring? I don't know.
Lexi is leaving us.
That's an outtake, Joel.
No, you can leave that in.
Yeah, I'm leaving that in. That's funny.
She is leaving us of just this like remnant of what she used to be. This like fake thing. Mm-hmm. She isn't really Lexi. She is every good card in a pile that these four descriptors at the bottom say she can be.
Yeah.
And at that point, there's a ton of synergy, and she looks like a lot of fun, but she isn't what she's supposed to be. And I think I am reminded of talking to Diego, who had that fuse build.
Yeah.
He kept playing it even as these other strategies came out and I remember talking to him like, I was talking to him about his deck, and he goes, "This isn't the strongest Lexi." And I'm like, "Why are you running it then? Like, you seem like you're a really competitively minded person. You're spending a lot of money. You're foiling out your deck. Why aren't you running the strongest thing?" And he goes, "Because this is Lexi.
Yeah.
That isn't. This is." And at the end of the day, when my hero Living Legend's out, I want it to be doing the things that we want him to be doing, and we fell in love with the hero.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like these Tales of Aria heroes are so cool. They're kind of the only representation we have of like fun, high magic heroes, where a lot of Flesh and Blood seems to be more of like a down-to-earth, low magic thing, where lots of sword slingers and club bashers that like... I'm really excited for the next time we come back to Aria as a place in Wrath where it's got all this magic flowing around, and it'll be balanced and everyone will love it. It'll be great. Speaking of the next time we go to Aria, I have, for Blue Pitch today, a custom hero design that I wanted to use to help you guys get the juices flowing for what a new Lexi might look like in the future. As a reminder, every time we do custom cards, we type them up and we put them in a Google Doc for you to read in case you're more of a visual reader instead of an audio reader. And this is going to be a little bit of text thrown at you. So if you need a little bit of a reminder as to what's on the card, you can find it in the description for the episode. Click the link and you can read it there. I have called my Lexi, Savior of Volthaven, because I'm imagining like a more mature version of her where like maybe Volthaven was under attack from like the demonastery.
Ooh.
And so the...
Well, I mean, that is the lore of Aria. The lore of Aria is that it was like the last thing that held out against the big demon invasion way back when.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I mean, the art on Endless Winter is him in that final battle, right before he gets frozen forever.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
So I'm imagining like she saved Volthaven from the attackers and everyone loves her. Because I read in her lore, she's already pretty well liked by Volthaven. She's like a well-known adventurer. Like, it reminds me of like D&D, you know? So I'm imagining like for her like final quest or whatever, she saves Volthaven, and that's kind of where I picture her story going. Her hero ability that I came up with costs 1 resource, and you choose an option. And it's a once per turn action. So once per turn, pay a resource, choose one of these 4 things. 1, you can turn a face down card in your arsenal face up. Synergy with New Horizon right there. Don't get any other benefit. That's the effect if you want to do it that way. The second option, turn a face up card in your arsenal face down. This gives you some potential to have other payoffs. So if you don't want to use New Horizon, you could use like
Skullbone Crosswrap?
Skullbone Crosswrap, which allows you to opt by turning a face down card face up. Like if there are other like ranger synergies out there that you want to play with, or like a way for you to give aim counters if you want to use even Barbed Castaway to turn cards in your arsenal face up to give aim counters. That's an option. I don't intend for that to be the best way to play Lexi, but I wanted to give her a lot of different options to give you that feeling of like, branching play lines and flexibility in her build. Because I do want that flexibility to be something that's important to Lexi. I want to retain that without having the like broken access to our incredible card pool. The next option is your next elemental attack this turn gains Go Again. So again, the action costs a resource, and you would just be giving your next elemental attack Go Again. I wanted it to be an elemental attack, so there's a little bit more silo in the design. She can't give all of the broken majestic areas from the entirety of Flesh and Blood's history Go Again, necessarily, but she can give her next elemental attack one. So all of the Arya arrows, she can give Go Again once per turn. If she's doing that, she's not doing any of these other effects, but if you want Go Again, she has access to Go Again. That felt important, but I feel like this is a little bit balanced.
It also lets you run those really nice ice elemental attacks with nice little disruption pieces on them.
Right.
Oh, like Frostfang?
Yeah, and give those Go Again.
That's kinda cool.
Which is kind of nice because I don't know if actually any deck ran them because like it was never really worth it to do that.
I feel like I saw Frostfang in some of Diego's lists.
Maybe.
The fourth option is the next time an elemental attack hits a hero this turn, it deals 2 damage to the defending hero unless they pay 1 resource. So this is my attempt at like leaving Frostbites. I've heard some buzz in the community claiming that like LSS is looking to move away from Frostbites when they come back to ice as a way of finding a less annoying to play against form of disruption. This is kind of my interpretation of that. It's just extra damage that they can pay a resource to stop. So if they're really low on life, they need that life to conserve, they're going to have to like spend resources to lose cards out of their hand, right? That extra damage could easily be relevant, but when you're paying a resource to stop something on your opponent's turn, it means you're going to have less cards on your turn, unless you're like also paying for other D-reacts or something. So it's kind of a soft tax.
Yeah. It's also nice because lightning and ice is represented in it. Having to pay the resource on an effect is a very ice-like ability. The extra damage on an on-hit is a very lightning ability.
Yeah.
If you're playing more lightning or ice-oriented, either way, it's just a nice effect that doesn't really bog down that flavor too much.
Right, because I'm also noticing like these other effects like can also not be used at all in a singular turn, and so maybe you just want to push a little bit extra damage if you already have like, you know, beefed up arsenal, or if you already have a plentiful Go Again in your turn. Like this is an interesting ability.
Yeah.
It just ties everything up.
I like this. The flexibility is both in the deck construction, right? The face up and face down, I really see synergizing with a ton of the Ranger cards.
Yeah.
But then the Go Again and the extra damage really plays into the more elemental playstyle and fuse playstyle. And then at the exact same time, it's like, you can kind of do both. Because this hero ability lets you do it whenever you want. So you can run a couple of the really nice Ranger cards that you want. And you can run a couple of the really nice elemental arrows that you want. And you can do it based on what's happening turn by turn.
All of these abilities are gated by that once per turn action. So she's never doing a whole lot, and the cost of a resource. She's never doing a whole lot on her turn. She doesn't get to use it for free, kind of like her old ability kind of felt. But still a lot of options and a lot of potential. I also am imagining 4 intellect, and 40 life. I don't think this hero would need a life penalty.
Agreed.
Okay, so with Voltaire rotating out, I don't feel like every time I come up with like a hero design, I have to do a weapon. I did feel that with this hero, because I feel Voltaire is so closely tied to the power level of Lexi and her identity that I really wanted to come up with an idea that could potentially replace it. I didn't have a name, unfortunately. As far as I could tell, Voltaire isn't mentioned in like her story on her main page. I tried to do a little research. The name of Voltaire, Strike Twice, is really cool, and I started thinking of like a bow that has a twice per turn instant and seeing how I can make that like fair and going up from there. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to imagine a bow that ultimately has a lower power level, because I think Voltaire is a little bit too strong to be healthy, let's like ratchet it up in a different way to make it a little bit more exciting. And I gave it a thrice per turn instant.
Okay.
Still instant?
Yes. I think that was something that made Lexi a little bit interesting. Like when you have some instant speed shenanigans going, I think turn 0 against Lexi, I wouldn't call it toxic. Maybe you guys think it would be, but like having to play that game of like, do I attack you and give up my action point, or do I just pass my turn and like see if I can trick you into loading with your bow? I kind of liked those mind games. So it's something that I valued and wanted to retain in this next iteration.
Cool.
All right.
It also plays into like the lightning flavor, like an instant, like lightning travels at instant speed, literally.
Yeah.
So this is a thrice per turn instant ability that costs 1 resource. I said you may put a card into your arsenal face up or face down. If you put an elemental arrow attack action card into your arsenal face up with this ability, it gains +1 power until end of turn. So you could pay 1 to load anything. If you want to get something out of your hand, for whatever reason, you can do that. This would have a lot of synergy with 3 of a kind because you can load like random cards after you draw with 3 of a kind. You'll just have to pay an extra resource for each one of them.
Oh, wow.
There's just something I just realized now.
It also lets you load traps
Yes.
because it's any card.
Ooh, that's kind of
Doesn't have to
interesting.
be an arrow.
And if you load a card in face up, and if that face up card is an elemental arrow action, then that attack gets +1 power. So she would only give +1 to her elemental arrows. This bow would not give like any other ancillary benefits other than being able to load 3 times in a turn. So if you have a go again arrow, as well as like maybe another elemental attack that you can give go again with your hero ability, you could potentially use this card 3 times. But you definitely have to go through a little bit of work to do that. So I see
And a lot more resources.
Yes. So I'm not actually imagining people are going to use this ability 3 times in a turn. It's kind of really like you can use it as much as you want because it's going to be rare that you want to use it more than 3 times. And I wanted to also carve out some space for like maybe in this iteration of Lexi, there's some face up and face down synergy that they could really explore with Lexi that hasn't super been explored in the past.
Yeah. I think that would actually be a really cool thing to do. Almost sort of like a maybe a kind of fuse-like mechanic that cared about a card being face down or face up. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, what I also like about this bow too is you can't give your regular arrows go again.
Right.
Like you kind of have to find some other way of doing it, like either through Captain's Call or Razor Reflex or some other way to give it go again in your deck construction.
Yeah, I completely removed any go again from like this bow. I think that was the like most overpowered part of Voltaire and the hardest to balance.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have a way where like it activates multiple times per turn and gives go again, at least not easily.
Yeah.
I kind of contemplated like pay extra resources to give it go again, like maybe it cost 2 in order to load an arrow, give it go again. That could probably be more balanced. But I just decided to remove it and kind of move it into her hero ability.
Yeah, because what I'm reading now is like, okay, I can pay 1 to load. I can pay 1 to give like Chilling Ice Vein go again. And then I can fire Chilling Ice Vein so I need a whole blue to play 1 arrow, right? And then on top of that, I have to play buffs that either cost 0 or I can pay 1 for those as well. So I need more cards in hand. I just need more planning overall. And it's kind of like a nice break from the original Lexi, who off of 1 blue can play like several arrows because it's often off the back of like a 3 of a kind, an Art of War, or like a Tunic, whatever. Like this just seems like way harder to exploit than the previous Lexi. So I'm all on board for this.
I also love so many of the instances where you are just tying this to elemental only things, right? Like elemental arrows get this effect. Elemental attacks get this effect. You're not able to just throw this onto the insanely good generic ranger arrows.
Right.
And if you want to run them, you're going to have to find other interesting ways of making them work.
And I don't mind like this version of Lexi playing like Codex of Frailty, Heatseeker, strong like generic ranger arrows. I just want her to not have them souped up versions of them in the way that Voltaire was able to do. What if you had all the strongest arrows in the game and they had go again? That's like the cracked part for me.
Right.
She still has an expanded card pool. She can do a lot of the things that Azalea can, but instead of having access to like Dominate, she has access to elemental arrow cards.
Which I think is what the intent, like what was first intended for each of these heroes is like, okay, we have a larger card pool. We can do all these interesting things like Fuse, play with this like new elemental card type, and it devolved into what it was eventually. So I think this design speaks to a lot of like what I hope is within the intelligent design of the new like Tales of Our Heroes whenever they come out from LSS.
I do want to note that when I redesigned Old Him way back when, I looked to create a brand new character with brand new mechanics. And when Han did Briar, he sort of did the same thing as well. Brand new character, way more focus on, I think, the lightning element is specifically what he was looking to do. Bring more power level of lightning into Briar's strategy. And he also designed a new character. You stayed with Lexi, which I found interesting. And you're also looking to create a very similar play style.
I'm being a little bit conservative with my design, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, why did you want to do that rather than try to reimagine what a lightning ice ranger could look like?
I think designing, like, today as opposed to even, like, a week ago, like, we have a little bit more context for what happens when a new hero is printed in the same class talent type. We have, like, an example of, like, Prism and even Kasai now that seem to be pretty faithful designs. And then there's also the counter example of Vincent, who seems to be pretty different than Chain. But that's to say that, like, this is a more faithful design. Like, I recognize that it doesn't have to be, but I wanted to explore, like, look, like, there seems to be these problems that we keep talking about with Lexi. Like, is this a version of that quote-unquote fixes that? If we turn down the power level a little bit, can this hero be, like, fair and fun and strong?
I like it.
That's the vision I'm trying to impart in y'all.
Yeah, and I think that goes with like LSS's core philosophies too. Like when they reimagined Prism, it was noticeably weaker than the OG Prism, mainly because she didn't have her insanely powerful Luminaris as her weapon, and still gave it like a unique design, very similar to what old Prism did, and still kept like the same like cards that she had. And then Vincent, who I feel is on the inverse, where they intentionally dumbed down the design so that they can like only go up from here, right? From the chain design, because I was just like, I think their core philosophy as a whole is shifting away from this like free go again, free card advantage. And so Vincent speaks to me that way, and this design speaks to me that way as well, where you have to like really have a concise way of building your turn to get these like same turns that old Lexi did. So I really like where you're going with this new imagined Lexi.
So I want to sign off with one thing. I didn't name this bow. So if you, the listener, have a cool name for this bow that can be used 3 times in a turn and can load face up or face down, gives your elemental arrows +1 power. So if you come up with a really cool name, I'll put it in our custom card document, and I'll even credit your name. So get out your keyboards, type out the best name that you can think of in our Discord or in the YouTube comments, and you'll be my favorite person for like a whole week.
Great call to action, Fuzzy.
So with that, do you guys want to move on to our Arsenal Zone?
Yeah, let's move on to our Arsenal Zone. So listener, for those of you who do not know, our Arsenal Zone is where each of us take the opportunity to talk about a card that we like, a card that we're thinking about, a card that we hate, or just a card.
One that's on our minds lately.
Yeah. And I think it is a good idea to start with Fuzzy.
He caught me with chalky milk in my mouth. All right, so if you've been paying attention, we're recording in the middle of skirmish season. I think there's a non-zero amount of skirmishes left, but we've already seen like 3 heroes rotate in this season alone.
4?
Yeah, Kano, Kasai, Chain, and Ira now. Right?
Yeah. Chain was this season?
Chain was this season, right at the start of this season.
Wow, somehow it felt like
ages ago, right?
So with Chain, Kano, Kasai, and Ira all rotating out, one of those heroes is the one I actually play in Blitz, and that's Kano. Now, I like Kano. I was never like crazy good at Kano, but in Blitz, it's kind of nice just to be able to like, block some damage, shoot 5 arcane. Oh, you're swinging lethal at me? Let's see if I can win. Like, it's very fun. Now, I know he's toxic. I know everybody hates me on the other end of the table, okay? But I like to think that because I wasn't taking him too seriously, that means I'm
You were not exempt from that hatred.
yeah, that's the word.
I know where
Fuzzy wants to be absolved.
Yeah. You are hereby not absolved.
So, in honor of Kano hitting Living Legend, I would like to shout out Ether Flare.
Oh.
It's that card, from Kano. It's like a Kano staple. It's not like Ether Wildfire, but this is like a solid Kano card where when you're comboing off, you flip the red Ether Flare off the top. That means ding, ding, ding. You could probably hit lethal if you're smart enough. I wasn't always smart enough, but Ether Flare is one of those cards I'm going to miss playing now that Kano's rotated. I brought a copy for each of you. I'm going to sign it, and then I have a little bit more to say.
Let's go.
Here's one for you, one for you.
Thank you. Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
This week for my card, I have chosen Revel in Runeblood.
Ugh.
Yes, this is a very frustrating card for a lot of people. It is a 0-cost non-attack action card in Viserai that creates 4 rune chance. That's not actually all that bad, guys. It's a 0 for 4. It's just Scar for a Scar, right?
No.
I roll.
You're right. Sorry, it has a horrible condition to fulfill where you have to play a non-attack action card and an attack action card before you play it.
Wait, how are you going to play a non-attack and an attack action in the same turn?
The non-attack action gives your attack action card go again.
That seems really hard, Clark.
It is with Warmonger's diplomacy. It's actually stupidly fucking hard nowadays. But I'm talking about Revel in Runeblood because the Viserai chat spent like an entire afternoon talking about this card. And I just pop on after work and I'm like, what happened in here? I'm rolling through like these dozens of messages.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden people are saying, yeah, like playing 2 of them off of a Spellbound Creepers is really good. And I'm like, what are they? Wait a minute. What are they talking about? And it turns out that you can play an attack action card, activate creepers, play a Revel in Runeblood. Now you play the attack action card and you let it resolve. Then you activate Spellbound Creepers and you play the Revel in Runeblood. Now you're thinking, Clark, this is stupid. There's no non-attack action card. It's going to do nothing. Sure, you get the action point back, right? You cast it at instant speed. It has go again. You net an action point. You get to keep going with your turn. But it's dumb, right? It's bad. Until you play another one on top of it. With them both on the stack, they both see each other as a non-attack action card that has been played. So they become active.
Yeah, I've told you this before.
No, you may have said that to me. It did not fucking register. I did not know that's how Revel in Runeblood worked.
Yeah.
And that's so insane to me that like they both see each other as a non-attack action card that has been played.
Yeah.
I think that is dumb and wrong and bad, and I don't think it should be a thing because I want Revel in Runeblood to be a fair card. God damn it!
Yeah, I think it's just Spellbound Creepers that just makes things like really, really tough to balance.
So weird. It just really makes you have to get into the weeds about the specific wording and the way that when the first one resolves, it sees the other one as being played. And then because of that, when the second one resolves, it saw the first one as being played. And that's just so messy.
Well, I don't know. You're casting both of them.
But it doesn't say cast, it says play. And when I think play, I think resolve, but that's not how the game sees it.
Yeah.
And it's just this really interesting niche case that I don't like.
Yeah, and they both create 5, if I'm not mistaken.
They both create 4. Viserai allows them to create 1 extra because it, again, same thing. When Viserai's ability goes on the stack, it's looking for if you've played a non-attack action card, and it counts as the non-attack action card that has been played once you stack them all wonky.
Which is why Viserai is fundamentally broken and should not get support ever. But that's besides that.
You're right. He should sit at 500 LL points forever and be bottom of the table forever and have a card that just specifically cripples him forever.
I'm shaking my fist in the greens.
What about you, Joel? What do you got?
So, for my card, I wanted to talk about a rather disappointing and underwhelming card that I thought was going to be really cool. And that's Chains of Mephetis. It's a blue 3-block shadow action. And it says it enters with a counter. And at the beginning of your action phase, you remove it or destroy it unless you remove a counter. And it says if a player would draw a card, instead banish the top card of your deck, you may play that card until end of turn. And the reason why I liked it is because it came out in Dusk Till Dawn, and I was like, oh my god, this stops Lexi, because now every time she plays 3 of a kind or Artivore or draws off a Ponder at the end of her turn, if this card is out, she will banish that arrow and she can't play it because she has to load it from her hand into her arsenal. So like, dude, if I play this, it's a non-game, but it doesn't have go again. And it only stays there for 1 turn unless you play it out of banish. So there's a lot of hoops because I not only have to either block with it or play it, I have to wait for it to go away and not draw any of cards on my own, because like it also interferes, like, and this is in terms of like Levia specifically. So if I were to play my own Artivore or my own Blood Rush spell, it also fucks me too in case I need the extra pitch or whatever.
But Joel, we want to banish our cards with 6 or more power.
That's true, but I would like to play or pitch with them as well. Like, anyways. So not only would I have to either play it, not play any of my own draw card effects, I'd have to then play more cards to banish it from my graveyard into my banish zone. And then on a turn where I'm not getting fucked by the opposing Lexi, I have to play it out of banish. Hopefully I don't have any like frostbites or anything where I can just like play 1 card. But then I'm not turning out Blood Debt. So I have to roll Scabskin Leathers if I want to banish something to turn out Blood Debt and also play this card. It's just so many moving pieces that ended up not going into any of my lifts, even as a blue block 3, because it was just so clunky. So that's the card I was thinking about as we were talking about this episode, because man, I was like if that card was just designed a little bit better, I probably could have done something in ProQuest season, but I didn't. So
I still think it's an incredibly cool card.
Yeah.
And I love seeing this like little niche of shadow cards that are disruptive.
Yeah.
But like they're really wonky and you got to use them in weird ways. Dimensional Vortex doesn't have a pitch or block value. So like how you have to play it. That's the only option.
Yep.
And I love those little things.
Yeah, Shadow has a lot of really interesting tools. I just think they don't have enough time or like in aggressive metas or disruptive metas to like really make use of them. So hopefully we see like more ways to get stuff into the banish zone without like, making it so absurdly broken like Chain was.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Cool.
With that being said, I think that is the end of our episode.
Please join our Discord.
And comment. And the call to action. Tell us, what's the name of Fuzzy's little interesting thrice activated bow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week when we talk about Icelander.
Until next time, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Pitch It To Me podcast is hosted by Fuzzy Delp, Clark Moore, and Joel Recinos. Executive producer, Talon Stradley. Logistics coordinator, John Farkas. Music by Dillon Hulse. Logo by Han V. Sound mixing, Christopher Moore. And last but not least, you. Thank you for listening. Please give us a follow on your favorite social media platform at Pitch It To Me podcast.